Disregarding all warnings, he reunited with the bull in the woods. What followed shocked everyone. Rain had just started to fall when the crack of a branch snapped Eli's attention toward the clearing. He didn't flinch, didn't hesitate. His boots were already sinking into the wet moss as he stepped off the narrow ridge trail and descended into the trees. The air was heavy with damp pine and the distant whisper of moving water. Leaves slapped his shoulders as he pushed through, one hand gripping the rope tied around his pack, the other resting near the old hunting knife strapped to his belt, not as a weapon, but as a tool. His breath came slow and steady, though inside his chest, his heart pounded like thunder waiting to break. He had seen the tracks, fresh ones, deep and wide. Cole was close, closer than he'd been in 2 years. Eli didn't need a map. The woods of Alder Ridge had been his second home since he could walk. He knew where the underbrush gave way to rock, where the deer trails cut under the ridge, and where the old lumber bridge crossed the stream like a forgotten scar. That's where he was heading. And that's where, in his gut, he knew he'd find him. As he reached the edge of the tree line and the clearing beyond, Eli slowed. The rain had lightened to a mist, just enough to silver the branches without soaking the ground. Everything was still. No birds, no wind, no sound beyond the low hiss of falling droplets. Then he saw him. Across the shallow stream, standing partially veiled by hanging brush and the gray veil of fog, was the bull. Cole. Eli's breath caught. Not out of fear, out of something older, something deeper. The bull was massive, more than he remembered. A wall of muscle and scars, his coat darker now, slick with rain, and his horns slightly worn at the tips. But the eyes, those eyes, still held the same mixture of confusion, pain, and memory. Eli dropped to one knee in the wet grass. Slowly, without a word, he unshouldered his pack and let it rest at his feet. He didn't call out, didn't move. He lowered his head, pressed his palm to the earth, and waited. Minutes passed. A branch creaked somewhere behind him, but he didn't turn. Cole didn't move at first. His breaths came slow, heavy. His hooves shifted once, and his ears flicked. Then, as if pulled by the ghost of old trust, he stepped forward. One hoof in the stream, then another. The water barely reached his knees. The bull's steps were slow, deliberate. Eli felt his own muscles tense, not in fear, but in awe. When Cole finally reached him, he stopped just a foot away. Steam rose from his back where the mist met warm skin. Then, gently, so gently it felt unreal, the bull lowered his great head and pressed his forehead into Eli's chest. Eli's throat closed with emotion. His hand lifted, trembling, and he laid it behind Cole's ear, rubbing the thick, damp fur like he had countless times before. "You remember," he whispered, voice cracked. In that moment, time dissolved. The forest was silent. The ache in Eli's chest, the years of searching, the nights of doubt, all of it disappeared. But peace never lasted long in Alder Ridge. The crack echoed like a gunshot through the clearing. Eli's head jerked up. Cole's body twitched beneath his hand. A black-finned dart jutted from his flank. "No!" Eli whispered, already reaching for it. The bull groaned, a deep guttural sound, halfway between a growl and a cry. His legs staggered slightly. Foam started to build around his lips. His breath quickened. Eli turned fast, heart pounding with sudden panic. Men were coming out of the woods, 6 of them, all male, all dressed in mottled camo jackets, stepping carefully, methodically, rifles lowered but ready. One held a long metal catchpole. Another had a second tranquilizer gun already aimed. Eli stepped between them and the bull, arms raised. "Don't!" he barked. "Back off!" The men hesitated, but only for a second. Then a voice rang out from behind them. Calm, cold, familiar. "Stand down, Maddox." Eli's stomach dropped. Sheriff Riggard emerged from the trees, boots crunching on the gravel edge of the stream. He wore his brown overcoat over his uniform, the silver badge on his chest catching what little light filtered through the rain clouds. His face was unreadable. Square-jawed, weathered, and locked tight in a look that gave nothing away. "Riggard," Eli growled, stepping back toward Cole, whose legs now trembled beneath him. "I warned you," the sheriff said simply, voice cutting through the mist. "That animal is a threat." "He didn't do anything!" Eli shouted. He didn't charge. He didn't growl. He came to me. You think I care what he did today? Riggert snapped. He put my brother in the hospital, crushed half his ribs, nearly killed him. You expect me to wait for him to finish the job? That was 2 years ago, Eli shouted back. And your brother? Your brother tried to whip him. Cole was scared. I was there. You raised a monster, Riggert replied, unmoved. Now you're trying to bring it back. Eli stepped back until he could feel Cole's warm side against his leg. The bull's breath was heavy now. The dart was taking effect. His knees buckled slightly. You're wrong, Eli said, voice quiet but fierce. He's not a monster. He was betrayed. Riggert didn't blink. He turned to the men behind him, raised one hand. You've got until sunrise to turn him in peacefully, he said. After that, we come back with kill orders. Eli's jaw clenched. His fists trembled at his sides. Rain dripped from his soaked shirt, but he didn't feel the cold anymore. Riggert gave one last look toward the bull, then turned and disappeared into the woods. The other men followed. Eli remained still as their footsteps faded. Cole let out a low groan behind him and slowly sank to his knees. Eli knelt beside him, pressed a hand to the bull's jaw. I've got you, he whispered. They're not taking you. Not again. He reached into his pack and pulled out a small sealed vial. Something Jory, the vet's assistant, had once given him in secret. A mild stimulant, not strong enough to reverse the tranquilizer, but enough to buy time. Stay with me, Eli murmured as he carefully injected it just beneath the bull's skin. Cole snorted weakly, but his breath slowed a little. His eyes remained open. Eli looked toward the trees. His jaw was set now, not with fear, but with purpose. They were coming back, and next time, they'd come to kill. But if Riggert thought Eli would just hand him over, he didn't know him at all. He ran a hand along Cole's neck, his voice steady now. We're not going down easy, he said. But the words still echoed from the woods behind him, cold and final. We warned you, Maddox, he said coldly. That thing's dangerous. We're putting him down. Eli stood like a statue, soaked to the bone, arms outstretched in front of the team that had just taken aim at his only remaining family. Cole swayed behind him, head low, breathing labored but steady, the tranquilizer not yet strong enough to knock him out. The scent of wet pine and iron filled the air, and for a moment, no one moved. He didn't hurt anyone this time, Eli said, voice sharp, ragged with urgency. You spooked him. He didn't charge, didn't even growl. The man nearest to him, holding a thick aluminum catchpole, adjusted his stance, unsure whether to act or back off. Another officer, younger, shifted his grip on the tranquilizer rifle but didn't raise it. Their eyes flicked toward the trees behind Eli. Then came the familiar sound of boots crunching against wet forest floor. Sheriff Riggert stepped into the clearing with the confidence of a man who believed he owned the woods. His wide-brimmed hat dripped from the brim. His coat was buttoned to the neck, the badge gleaming on his chest. He stopped just short of the others, face unreadable, jaw clenched tight. We've been over this, Maddox, Riggert said, arms folded. You don't get to negotiate. Eli turned to face him fully. He didn't do anything wrong, he repeated. You're calling this justice, but it's revenge. The sheriff's brow twitched. 2 years ago, Eli went on, voice low and unwavering. Your brother tried to rope a bull like he was wrangling a dog. Cole panicked. That was your mistake, not his. Riggert's nostrils flared. Garrett's ribs say otherwise. And Garrett's mouth never mentioned that he brought a stun baton into the pen, did it? Eli countered. Never told anyone he struck him first. The men behind Riggert shifted slightly, eyes darting between them. This isn't about an animal attack, Eli said, breath visible in the mist. It's about reputation. You lost yours. You want to wipe him out so nobody remembers. A long silence followed. Then Riggert stepped forward, boots sinking into the mud with slow, deliberate weight. I don't care what you believe, he said, voice cold. State emergency code gives me the right to remove any animal deemed a risk to public safety. He gestured to the forest behind them. My men say he ran loose near Camp Thatcher last week. Spooked a trucker, caused a crash. You think the law's going to wait for a fatality? Eli didn't flinch. He wasn't near Thatcher. I was with him. Can't prove that, Riggert shot back. "But I can prove he's off the registry, uncontained, and a repeat offender. That's all I need." Cole let out a low grunt behind Eli, almost as if he understood the argument being had on his behalf. His legs trembled slightly, but he remained standing. Riggert narrowed his eyes. "You've got until sunrise to turn him in peacefully," he said, stepping back. "After that, we come back with kill orders." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The message was heavy enough to echo through the clearing even after he turned away. One by one, the camo-clad officers followed. Not a word was spoken. They left like wolves pulling back for the night, not defeated, just waiting for the next chance to pounce. Eli didn't move until the last flashlight disappeared into the brush. The rain had stopped, but everything around him still dripped, the trees sighing in the wet silence. Cole sank to his haunches, panting. Eli turned to him, crouched low, and gently placed a hand on his cheek. The bull's eyes fluttered, sluggish from the tranquilizer but not fully out. Eli's voice cracked when he spoke. "They'll come again, boy," he murmured. "And this time, we don't run." The walk back to the shack took twice as long. Cole leaned against Eli most of the way, and Eli guided him carefully, pausing every few minutes to let him rest under the trees. The sky above had turned a deep slate gray, and the woods had lost all light except what the moon offered through breaks in the clouds. The shack stood in a gully just off the base of the ridge, half-rotted roof partially caved in, but it still offered cover. Eli had found it weeks ago while scouting for signs of Cole. Now it would become their defense point. Inside, Eli quickly dragged old lumber across the gaps in the wall, setting up a barricade of crates and rusted tools. He found canvas tarps in the storage trunk and draped them over the frame to keep Cole dry. Using burlap sacks filled with pine needles and hay scraps, he made a bed. Cole collapsed onto it without protest. Eli worked quickly. His hands didn't tremble, not anymore. He moved with precision. He'd spent years learning how to track animals. Now he had to learn how to defend one. The next few hours were spent in complete silence. He strung lines of twine and rope between trees around the shack, attaching empty tin cans and broken glass, improvised alarms. He gathered every reflective surface he could find, mirrors, foil, even broken car lights, and positioned them facing the trail. Headlamps would bounce light everywhere, blinding anyone who came through. He turned a battered car battery into a weapon, wiring an old cattle prod through a set of nails on a wooden plank. It wouldn't stop anyone for long, but it might buy time. Inside, Cole stirred and watched him through half-lidded eyes. Eli returned often to rub his side, check his breathing, whisper calm words. "You've always been smarter than they thought," he said softly. "That's what scares them." Outside, the wind started to pick up. Distant owls called. A fox yipped and then went quiet. Even the forest seemed to know something was coming. As the sky faded into deep blue and the moon shifted westward, Eli sat beside Cole and opened a small pouch. Inside was a braided rope, thick, soft, and worn from age. It was the same one he'd used when Cole was still a calf, learning to walk the fence line without wandering. It wasn't for control. It was for connection. He slipped it gently around the bull's thick neck and leaned close. "You trust me?" he whispered, his fingers gripping the rope like a lifeline. Cole blinked once, no sound, no movement, just a slow, steady breath. Eli smiled faintly. He stood, muscles aching, boots soaked, and stepped outside into the final hour of night. Somewhere in the distance, an engine growled, then another. The trees lit up with pale light from the ridgeline road. They were coming back. He didn't grab a weapon, didn't run. He looked toward the tree line, shoulders squared, and whispered into the wind, voice steady and unshaken. "Let them come." At first light, the sound of engines cut through the mist like a blade. Tires crunched over damp gravel as 3 black trucks rolled to a stop at the edge of Alder Ridge. Doors slammed. Boots hit the earth. 12 men, all armed, all focused, filed into the tree line like a private strike unit. They wore reinforced vests, held tranquilizer rifles in gloved hands, and moved with the precision of people who didn't expect trouble, but were prepared to end it if it came. At their side hovered a drone, its sleek frame whirring as it lifted off and began scanning the forest ahead, its red lens sweeping side to side. Sheriff Riggert stood in front of them, arms folded, eyes locked on the woods. The dew hadn't dried yet, but the temperature was rising. The air felt heavy, like it was holding its breath. Riggert wasn't here for negotiation. He had no clipboard, no orders to deliver. Only one sentence circled in his mind like a promise. This ends now. Move slow, fan out, he said calmly. Keep eyes on the yacht. A tripwire snapped beneath a boot, triggering a chain of tin cans and glass jars to crash from above. The sound tore through the stillness like an alarm bell. The lead officer flinched, lost footing, and landed hard, his face colliding with a jagged rock. Blood smeared his cheek as he groaned, clutching his nose. What the? Before anyone could react, a second man's headlamp reflected back at him, 5 times. Mirrors and foil lined the trees, throwing light in every direction. Their sight lines vanished in a burst of glare. Panic fluttered through the group like a gust of wind. Spread out, Riggert barked, eyes narrowing. The woods had become a maze. Every few feet, another trip line or flash trap sent them stumbling or turning in confusion. They were being herded without even knowing it. And above them, the drone buzzed louder, locking onto a shadow flickering between trees. Through the tangle of limbs and brush, Eli moved fast, guiding Cole along a narrow ridge path just beneath the upper slope. The bull was steady now, eyes clear, legs firm, responding to each tug of the rope with instinctive trust. Eli's lungs burned, and his clothes clung to him with sweat and rain, but he didn't slow. Every turn had been mapped in his head the night before, every branch cleared, every loose stone marked. They were heading for higher ground, just beyond the old trapper's blind. But the mechanical hum above shifted tone. Eli looked up and saw it. The drone had locked in. No! He started, pulling hard on the rope. Too late. A sharp hiss cut the air. A dart zipped down in a perfect arc. Without thinking, Eli turned and threw himself sideways, arms wide. The dart hit him in the thigh. He collapsed mid-step. The forest spun. His fingers clenched the rope as he landed hard in the underbrush. The breath knocked out of him. Pain shot through his leg like fire, and the numbing effect started fast, creeping up from muscle to bone. Cole, keep moving, he groaned, but the rope slid from his hand. Cole froze. The bull turned. His eyes found Eli, sprawled in the dirt, mouth open, barely able to lift his head. And then Cole did the unthinkable. He didn't run. He roared. The sound wasn't just a bellow, it was a declaration. Trees shook, birds scattered, and before anyone could react, Cole charged, not at Eli, at the drone. He thundered through the underbrush like a living battering ram, hooves tearing up the forest floor. The drone adjusted midair, trying to ascend, but Cole was faster. He leapt with surprising agility, horns swinging upward. The impact was instant and absolute. His horns caught the drone dead center, splitting its casing with a crack like breaking glass. Sparks exploded in every direction. The machine spiraled, lights flickering, until it slammed into a tree and crumpled. For a second, no one moved. Then someone shouted, "It's charging!" Another officer raised his rifle, but Cole had already turned. He galloped toward the man with terrifying speed. The tranquilizer dart left the barrel, but missed wide. The bull didn't. Cole swung his head low and clipped the man's leg with a sideways horn sweep. The man screamed and tumbled, his weapon skidding across the ground. The rest of the team scattered, but Cole didn't pursue. He wheeled around, steam rising from his back, and trotted back toward Eli, who lay groaning, barely conscious. The bull stood over him, eyes fierce, body tense, hooves planted like anchors. His breath came heavy and fast, but he didn't move, he just guarded. Through the broken line of trees, a new figure appeared, Jory, the young veterinary assistant, hands raised in caution. "Easy," Jory murmured, stepping slowly. "Not here to fight." Cole's ears twitched, but he stayed still. Jory knelt beside Eli, checked his pulse. "He's okay," he muttered. Then his eyes moved to the bull. "This isn't aggression," he said aloud, standing again, stunned. "He's protecting him." Behind him, Riggert arrived, weapon still slung, face unreadable. "What happened?" he demanded. Jory didn't answer right away. He pulled out his phone instead. "There's something you should see," he said. The screen lit up with a grainy dashboard cam feed. It showed Riggert sitting in his truck, parked just outside town earlier that morning. His voice played through the speakers. "Doesn't matter if the bull's calm. We finish this. My brother never got justice." The moment it ended, Jory turned the screen outward. The meaning sank in instantly. This hadn't been a state-sanctioned operation. It wasn't about law. It was personal, a vendetta. The officers, one by one, looked toward Riggert. Doubt showed on their faces. Shame followed. One lowered his rifle, then another. Eventually, all weapons dipped toward the forest floor. Riggert clenched his jaw, eyes darting from the phone to the wreckage of the drone, then to Eli's motionless body and the bull that refused to leave his side. His shoulders sank slightly, barely visible beneath his coat. Then he stepped forward. Cole shifted, snorting loudly, ready to defend. But Eli stirred, reaching up weakly and brushing a hand against the bull's leg. "Easy, boy," he whispered. Riggert stopped just feet away, boots muddy, eyes cold. "You win," he said bitterly, voice low. "But this ain't over." 3 months later, the sun rose over Maddox Hollow with a calmness it hadn't known in years. The mist rolled in from the low ridge like a soft curtain, and dew clung to the wild grass that now grew untamed across the valley. The land, once dismissed as a useless patch of backwoods, had transformed into something sacred. No fences, just wooden posts and wire rope that marked boundaries without trapping anything. Signs hung along the trailheads now. Maddox Hollow Wildlife Reserve. Authorized personnel only. The drone footage had done what Eli never could with words. It showed everything. Cole's refusal to flee, his choice to protect rather than fight, and the moment when the wild beast became a guardian instead of a threat. The clip spread faster than wildfire. Animal rights groups picked it up within days, and within a week, the public's opinion flipped. There were protests outside the sheriff's office. Letters poured in from across the country. Journalists showed up, and when they asked Eli for comment, he said only, "He's not the one who got lost. We were." The pressure on local officials built quietly but relentlessly. An internal investigation was launched by the state's Wildlife Ethics Board. Documents surfaced, falsified reports, manipulated photos of supposed damage zones, and audio logs where Riggert had twisted routine sightings into claims of public danger. The final blow came when a deputy anonymously leaked the unedited dashcam conversation, the one Jory had played in the woods. "Doesn't matter if the bull's calm. We finish this. My brother never got justice." That sentence appeared in headlines across the state. The sheriff resigned 2 days later. In the wake of it all, the land changed, but so did Eli. He didn't rebuild the ranch. The house still stood in ruins on the western slope, its chimney cracked, roof sunken inward. Eli never repaired it. Instead, he built something different. A series of low shelters nestled into the ridge, made from reclaimed timber and corrugated steel, with solar lights and rain barrels. He called it the Hollow Habitat Project. A rehabilitation zone, not a prison. A home for animals misunderstood by men too quick to brand them dangerous. Cole was the first and only resident, but not the last. 2 independent behaviorists evaluated him over a span of weeks. They walked beside him, fed him by hand, sat beside him in the clearing. They used terms like uncommonly intelligent, responsive, and non-aggressive to a fault. One of them even cried after watching Cole nudge a fallen branch away from a foxhole, as if he understood another animal might get stuck. But Cole never returned to a pen or paddock. He roamed free, sometimes disappearing into the trees for hours, even days, but always returning before dawn. Eli learned to read the rhythm of his hooves on the rock, the weight of his breath in the fog. He never called for him. He never had to. The question of funding was a mystery at first. Eli had sold what little remained from the ranch, mostly tools and equipment, but it wouldn't have covered half the cost. The answer came quietly in the form of an envelope with no return address, inside of which was a transfer slip and a note. For those who protect what others fear. Eli suspected Jory. The young vet had become a quiet force in animal protection circles, giving talks, publishing studies, even consulting on legislation around humane wildlife response. But Jory never confirmed it. He just visited now and then, bringing supplies and updates. Eli didn't return to ranching. He didn't miss it. Instead, he became something else, a guide for the lost, especially the young ones. Local programs began sending troubled teens up to the hollow. Boys mostly, caught in fights, carrying records or tempers, or just silence no one could break. They'd arrive angry, defensive, arms folded like shields. Eli never lectured them. He simply led them to the fence line. Cole would be there, massive and quiet, with eyes that had seen more than most adults ever would. He didn't perform tricks. He didn't approach unless they were calm. Sometimes he'd walk right past them, brushing their shoulders with his side, slow and deliberate. "There's always a story behind what you call dangerous," Eli would say, hands in his coat pockets, voice low but steady. Most of the time they just needed someone to stop chasing them. Sometimes the boys listened, sometimes they didn't, but most of them came back the next week. Some of them even stayed to help. By summer, families from town started visiting. Not many at first, just a few curious souls who had watched the videos and wanted to see if it was real. Then came others, old skeptics, retired ranchers, even Sheriff Riggert's former deputy, who left a bag of carrots and a note that simply read, "Sorry." Eli never spoke of it, but he left the carrots at the edge of the woods. The next morning, they were gone. One day, Garrett Riggert himself came. He walked with a cane now. The limp was permanent. The damage to his ribs and spine had healed crooked. No one expected him to come, least of all Eli. But there he was, standing by the fence, face gaunt, hat in hand. He didn't speak. He didn't try to approach. He just stood there for a while, staring at the bull he'd once feared, maybe hated. Then, slowly, he gave a small nod. Cole watched him, said nothing, did nothing. That was enough. Eli saw it all from a distance, standing beside a tree with arms folded across his chest. He didn't interrupt. He didn't need to. That moment wasn't for him. The hollow changed every season, but one thing remained the same. Cole's silhouette in the mist, moving through the trees like something caught between dream and memory. His horns were broader now, his steps slower but no less sure. He carried the years on his back with pride. Eli never spoke of that night in the woods again. He didn't have to. He remembered every detail, the roar, the charge, the fall, the moment when trust proved stronger than fear. And every morning when the mist settled over Maddox Hollow and the wind stirred the leaves just right, he stood at the edge of the ridge, his hand on the fence rope, and called softly across the trees. And Cole always came, not because he was told, because he chose to. And every morning Eli smiled the same way he had when it all began. Disregarding all warnings, he reunited with the bull in the woods. What followed shocked everyone.